If you guys saw my video series on the old Crusty Nova that we drug out of a guy's backyard and got running again after about 24 years of sitting there, then you also know that I bought an engine as part of a package deal on that car. The engine was also kind of a mystery, didn't know anything about it, kind of a gamble, who knows, there could be some issues with it, but I did want to go ahead and run some numbers on this thing and figure out what it is to see what I bought. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We got the engine inside here and we're going to take a good look at it, see what this thing is. Now the very first thing that caught my attention and makes me real happy are these two humps. Two humps. These are later model, like 68 or later, double hump heads. So these are pretty desirable. That leads me to believe that this engine is something good. 3956618. Now that is a very good casting number. That is a casting number that was used in the late 60s by Chevrolet. That was used on high performance engines like the 327s that made a bunch of power, and even the 302. Now, I doubt this is a 302 because if it was, it would have a different suffix code. But this could still be a very cool engine. I'm going to take a break for just a second and Google this, and we're going to figure this out. Okay, the Google machine tells me that 3956618 is the casting number. That could be a 327, it could be a 350, or it could be a 302. They were all cast with the same type of block. So we got to take a look here. This right here is the suffix code area. The front pad of the block on sort of the passenger side has a series of numbers and letters that should tell us what this engine is. The suffix code on the front is pretty special because it tells you horsepower level, it tells you whether or not it had a 4-barrel carburetor or a 2-barrel. It can tell you a lot of things. HN tells us 3 options that this engine could be. One is a 65 model 327, 375 horse, fuel injected small block for a Corvette. Now, that's pretty much ruled out because this is a later model engine. It's got the bigger harmonic balancer. It's just not all adding up to be a 65 Corvette engine. The other options are from 1969, one of them being a 327 and one of them being a 350. So there's not many options left to try to figure out what this thing is aside from looking underneath, and we can do that very easily because the oil pan is off of it, and get the casting number off of the crankshaft. And that will tell us whether this is a 327 or whether it's a 350. Man, it was almost like we meant to. Look right here. The crank was actually right in the perfect spot where I can see that casting number. It looks like it's 3932442. Okay, we're back from Google, and it says that this is a 350 crank. So that really narrows it down for us. We don't have to wonder anymore what this engine is. This means that it has, instead of the short 327 stroke, this has a 3.48 inch stroke, and that means it's a 350. So that's not bad. It's just a cast crank. It's not a forged crank or anything like that. But it did say that it could be from a 68 through 81 Chevrolet Nova or Chevrolet Corvette, or it could be a truck. But judging by the suffix code, the HN suffix code around here, go back up here to this, judging by that HN suffix code and the fact that it is truly a 350, that means that this is a 1969 350, 300 horsepower, and the suffix code tells us that it had an automatic transmission and a 4-barrel carburetor. So that's pretty cool to be able to just look at a few numbers without a tremendous amount of work and tell exactly where this engine came from. Okay, so that brings us up to the cylinder heads. Now, I already told you about the double humps, or camel humps as some people call them. These are 68 and beyond because they have the accessory holes. The earlier heads had double humps, but they didn't have these bosses here and they didn't have these threaded holes. So the heads could very well be part of this engine from the factory. Not real sure though, so let's take a look at the numbers. And there's upside down. Let me turn my camera around here. Okay, 3927186. That 186 is a very good casting number. That is for even the 302s. The 69 DZ 302 would have had a 186 head. And looking right here at the date code, right underneath the casting number, we see B189. Now that B is, that designates the month, and B would have been February. 18, I guess, would have been the 18th day of February. And that last number, that's very important. That number 9, that means these heads were built in February of 1969. So this is kind of a late production 1969 engine. If it was built in February, that means it was kind of at the end of the production cycle, but it's still a really cool piece. Now these heads, they need to be worked on. I noticed we had some issues. There's a lot of push rods and stuff hanging out here, and if you look on some of these, this one is a good example. If we can get a clear shot of it, you can see that it's actually pulled those press-in studs. It's pulled them out of the cylinder head. Oh, here's another thing we can check on this block is the date code on the block. I wiped a little spot here. We got B209. Yes. So once again, B stands for February. The day is the 20th. Number 9, that means 1969. So we've got a differential of only 2 days. We've got an 18 on the cylinder head and a 20 on the block. So that tells us that this cylinder head and this block go together. So that's pretty rare to find. And when you see a small block Chevrolet, usually they've been pieced together. They've just been kind of, you know, they've been worked on. They've been rebuilt. They've been fooled with. All right, I found one more thing to check on here. I forgot that this thing came with a cast iron 4-barrel intake manifold. So this thing got casting number right there, 3927184. And I happened to already Google that. And sure enough, 1969 350. Now this could have been 255 horse, 300 horse, or 350 horse. They all use the same intake manifold. And so that tells me that this intake is the right one for this engine. So I can't believe that this thing, all the numbers are adding up. Everything looks to be a matching set as far as the dates, the casting numbers, all of everything is adding up to be 1969 350, 300 horse. So let's take a look at some of the other stuff that came with this engine. Plenty of parts, including this water pump. This is a factory GM piece. We can see on the date code there it says a 0 on the end, which means it could have been 1970, could have been 1980, not real sure. But, you know, just your regular cast iron water pump. Brand oil filter. It is brand new, but I'll throw that right in the trash. 10mm wrench. Craftsman. Wouldn't fit anything on this engine, but I'll consider that a bonus. Some random junk. Single groove water pump pulley. That's a good piece to have. Handle. Got an HEI distributor. That's a good piece. I'll hang on to that one. Always good to have a HEI laying around. I don't know what these are. What is that? Some at least one belt. I thought I saw another one. An old belt. A piece of a fuel line, it looks like. A couple of bolts. We've got a clutch fan assembly. Another good piece to have hanging around. Looks like a fairly modern starter. That is a Duralast GM alternator. Another good piece. Maybe that thing works. That'd be cool. And one of the ultimate bonuses out of this whole thing, single line Holley, looks fairly modern. Also in the deal, Edelbrock Performer aluminum intake is pretty crusty, but it'll clean up good. We'll be able to clean that and resell it, or maybe use it on this. Not sure. 2 sets of Edelbrock valve covers. I got these chrome stamped ones and the aluminum, like the 80s style. Let's see here, HEI cap, plug wires. What else we got? Oh my, I don't know what this is. Pretty sure that's a bird's nest. Possibly a squirrel's nest. I see some nuts. Huh, okay. Interesting. Just place that right over here. Okay, that's just some random bolts. Looks like the intake bolts. A couple of hose clamps. I'm sure I'll be able to use those. Some good washers. That's nice. A couple of brackets here and there. Distributor hold down. Well, that's some good stuff. Cool. And then classic Edelbrock chrome air cleaner with a filter. That's a big time bonus. Brake shoes. And then this box right here is some push rods. Now, I have my theories about why this engine got pulled from whatever it was in previously. And it looks like they were doing some valve train work, and I think the real issue were these studs pulling out of the heads. So that leads me to believe that maybe there is an aftermarket camshaft in here, something a little more aggressive than stock. I'm not sure. Or maybe it just got a little age on it, started pulling those studs out. But you can see up under the rocker arms, you can see those marks, like where they've pulled up out of the heads. You can also sometimes, you might not be able to see it in the video, but sometimes you can eyeball where those studs are. Some are higher than others. It looks like that one's a little higher. Looks like that one's a little higher than that one. So, you know, something happened with this thing. It probably started running rough. Couldn't diagnose it, so they took it out, started piddling with the valve train, and, you know, things kind of got carried away. But I'm super happy with this motor. This is a super good engine to build. This is something that I can buy a pretty simple rebuild kit, some new main bearings, rod bearings, some rings, gasket set. I can probably spend another, let's say $500 and actually have a very functional, very good 350 engine. So pretty happy with that. I'm glad we were able to decode it, look at all these numbers, these date codes. That's pretty cool stuff. So you never know what you're going to find. This was part of a package deal. You know, it wasn't really something that I just had to have, but it was thrown in on the deal. And I'm super glad that it was. This is a good buy.